Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the organizers, Joe and Mitch, for inviting me to speak today. We heard this morning from Ian, Dominic, and John about the importance of patience to us, the importance of the consumer. Well, what is the consumer up to? They're on social media right now. More than 350 million users on Facebook and Twitter. 60% of Americans are turning to the media, internet, to help them with their diseases, and this statistic is going up. A recent report by Michael Law that PAB commissioned shows that 70% of Canadians are there, and again, the trend is increasing. If we were to go onto certain sites, patients like you, I can find patients that have the same disease state as me and talk with them about it. Talk about off-label uses, talk about what drugs are planned for the future. I can go onto the Plavix site from Canada and get the prescribing information that is targeted to the physicians. No problem. So how do we deal with this, having regard to the laws and having regard to our patients, our customers that we really want to connect with here? First question, does your company have plans to use social media to promote its drugs? So mixed results here across the board. Well, what if we found, going to move on to the next slide, what if we found in terms of companies' reluctance to use social media? It's primarily having to do with the lack of understanding of the regulations. In a recent survey, Canadian companies said it's either our lack of understanding or what we perceive to be hurdles that stop us from getting into the social media. A third response was the company's obligation to monitor the social media for compliance. What do you do if you have your own website and your patients are talking about off-label uses on your site? What happens with adverse event reporting? Do you have to pick up that discussion and report that to the regulators, for example? How does that impact on your obligations? So what are some interesting uses of social media that we're seeing right now? Here's a race car driver, Charlie Kimball, who's a diabetic, and he has a relationship with Novo Nordisk, and he's tweeting regularly regarding the impact that Novo's product has had in his lifestyle, his ability to race cars. Formerly, a couple of companies had tried to prevent patients from commenting on their corporate Facebook pages because they were worried about their lack of control. And as a result, some companies prevented any commentary, so you couldn't have likes, you couldn't have sharing, for example, and others provided limited control. Well, Facebook has changed its policy now, and they said no more screening. If you have a Facebook page, it's complete access. We also, as Richard had mentioned, we have customized applications now and more are coming out. So if I've got a particular disease, I can get an app on my iPhone that tells me with my symptoms, what drug should I be taking? How do we deal with this legally as a company, and what are some of the restrictions for us? Well, the laws are the exact same that apply to traditional media. So if you've got Chronicles of Marketing, print publication, the exact laws that apply to that publication apply to social media. What are those laws? In Canada and the United States, it's a Food and Drugs Act, and it's our version of the Competition Act in Canada and the Lanham Act in the United States. In other words, you've got to advertise or promote consistent with what your product approval is. You can't mislead. So you can't, as an executive, go onto a blog and disguise yourself and then bolster your product. There has to be fair balance, so you have to talk about the risks. And transparency. Who is it that's behind Charlie Kimball blogging? Who is it who's behind patients like me? If I sign on to the website and I'm promoting a company, is that me as an individual, or is it because I have a relationship with that company? So the laws are trying to achieve those particular issues. The question that's come up recently is the one-click rule. So for example, on Twitter, where you have only 140 character limitation, how do you fit the risks in that? And is it enough that I can just click through to the risks to get that information? What's happening in Canada? Well, Health Canada says steady as she goes. We've got the laws, they cover traditional media, they cover the new media, that's your action plan. ASC has a couple of guidelines that they've posted and checklists on social media for direct-to-consumer education and direct-to-consumer advertising. They're worth looking at. PAB has a draft amendment to Section 6.5 of its code. Comments are due by the end of this week, with the draft revision going public hopefully by September 1st and roll out by January 1st of next year. So in terms of PAB, what do they have planned for prescription drug advertising? Disclosure of sponsorship, links to the product monograph, pre-clearance reviews are going to become available, and they deal with banner pop-ups and how to deal with fair balance in those kinds of situations. Access control is another issue where most patients can get to the full physician's site by putting in the DIN number, for example, or the full patient site by putting in the DIN number. There's talk that that is insufficient and we have to change the access controls for Canada. But how does that dovetail what's going on in the States? Because I can access a US site, answer to the question, am I a physician? Many people say yes, and click right through. So how does it work for Canada versus the US, and how is all of this going to dovetail and work as we try to get close to our patients? The FDA, it's rolling out its position little by little. Although Australia and Europe have positions on social media, the FDA is taking baby steps. They have released a social media policy in draft on off-label use. And what do you do if you have your own site that consumers go on to and speak about the off-label uses of your product? Their rules are pretty tight. You can't respond on the public site. You have to take that offline to your medical department. You have to indicate that you're representing the company and that you'd like to contact and speak with them about the off-label use. So the proposed FDA rules are very strict, and it may give us a taste of what's to come in terms of social media and how advertising will be regulated. What's expected in the industry? Most people think that social media is here to stay, that the FDA will weigh in, they won't prohibit it, but that we will be managed. And so what's the trick here? Do you think, as the next question, that a link off the Twitter site or off your Facebook site to the risks, is that sufficient risk information? Well, there you go. The FDA says it's insufficient. They have issued multiple warning letters to companies that had the link available, not directly accessible, and the companies were asked to cease that kind of advertising. They considered it not to be fair balance. It's a moving target. Consumers have filed complaints with the FTC saying that the pharma industry is being deceptive in how it uses the social media. So what are the takeaways for us? Social media is absolutely here to stay. Our patients who we want to connect with, we've heard that today, they are using social media. So what do we do to get there? Corporate Facebook account, likely a good idea, but you want to be careful about who can speak for your company and how are you going to manage and monitor that without seeming to have so much control that you're shutting down the discussion. Be careful about stealth marketing. Anybody at the company going in and commenting on blogs to push the product, promote the product, that is warned by the company. So you need to have a policy and be careful about that. Get comfortable relinquishing control. Social media is about loss of control. Lawyers love control, but we have to get comfortable letting go because it's here to stay, and the question is how to manage the risk so that what we're doing is reasonable and getting us to the end result. We will make some mistakes. Be careful about the IP issues. If you link music or you disparage another company's product or use their trademark, you could get into some IP issues. And the general laws that currently apply to regular advertising apply to the new world in social media. So last question here. There was a recent survey of Canadian companies who are actually currently using social media in the drug industry, and which type of social media do you think that they use the most? That is correct. It's Facebook. Now over to Kevin Leshuk of Celgene to finish off our panel discussion. Thank you.